welcome to the Dove Recovery House podcast. I'm Wendy Noe, Executive Director at Dove Recovery House for Women and your podcast host. I would like to ask you to please subscribe and share this podcast. We want to help people understand more about substance use disorder and how we can together save more lives. Today, I am really excited to be with Justin Phillips, the Executive Director of Overdose Lifeline. She has become a great friend and collaborator in this world, and I think you will love to hear her story and all that she has to share with us. So welcome, Justin.
Thank you, Wendy.
How are you today?
Good to be with you this morning.
Yeah, it's good to be here. So we've worked together for a while now, but tell them, who are you?
I'm Justin Phillips. I'm the founder and executive director of Overdose Lifeline. We're a nonprofit. We're based in Indianapolis. We serve the state of Indiana, and some of our programs are used by other states in the country. And really, so my background is in public health and injury prevention. So for many, many years, I worked to keep children safe from the number one causes of death, such as motor vehicle crashes. So questions about car seats, I got the answers. And I worked for the state of Indiana, managing federal highway traffic safety dollars. Also, person who's been in recovery from my own alcoholism since 1989. So, I thought I really understood substance use disorder to a certain degree, but what I didn't understand was opioids. And so when my then 19-year-old son, Aaron, shared with me that he was using heroin and couldn't step on his own, we did what we thought was right to get him help. But I really didn't understand the magnitude, and I didn't understand the sure and swift death that can occur from using opioids. And so, unfortunately, he lost his life in 2013 from a heroin overdose, and I learned a whole lot about a lot of things, including the overdose reversal drug that was around, but no one was really talking about it or using it, Naloxone. And I learned, that hydrocodone, which is often prescribed for really a lot of simple things, it's Tylenol 3 and heroin are actually in the same drug family. I didn't know any of those things. So I just kind of took my skill set around public health advocacy and nonprofit management and started Overdose Lifeline so we could change the approach. It's a chronic brain disease. We don't treat it like a chronic disease. We treat it like a moral failing and a willpower issue.
Right. There's a lot of stigma attached around substance use disorder and it being more of a choice rather than a mental disease. And we've talked about that here on this podcast. And that's what's so important to me is that people understand that this is a disease that affects the brain. Mm-hmm. And it's not like people wake up one day and decide at the age of 13, let's say, that they're going to start using heroin. Right. Something comes before it. My big motto is that trauma is the gateway drug. So what happened before that? So you took a mom's pain. I can imagine that grief as a mom to another mom. I cannot imagine that heartbreak of losing a child. Mm-hmm. But you did something with it, and you did something good with it, and you created Overdose Lifeline. So what is Overdose Lifeline?
So primarily we are about education, advocacy, and support in those sort of three branches of our work. We started with education and access to the overdose reversal of Naloxone. So when we started Overdose Lifeline, Naloxone required a prescription, and it required the prescription to be written for you as the patient who needed the drug, which was unrealistic because as someone who potentially is misusing opioids, I'm not going to acknowledge that to my physician. And I'm not honestly going to acknowledge that I need the overdose reversal drug because as humans, we don't believe, anything bad's really going to happen to us. So we passed Aaron's Law with a whole bunch of other great advocates and Senator Merritt in 2015 so that now you can go into any pharmacy in the state of Indiana and get Naloxone without a prescription. And then sort of simultaneously, we started on education programs for youth because we wanted youth to understand the real dangers around an opioid, that in fact it's a legitimate prescription that you may get, often with wisdom teeth extraction as an adolescent, and how dangerous it is. So we have a program that we use in schools, and we've just been building on that education. So now we have a 20-hour certificate through the university with continuing education units so that if you don't really understand substance use disorder, you can go get this 20-hour certificate and really knowledge yourself up to be able to address what really is a crisis. We have somewhere around 43 million people who suffer from this chronic disease, which is more than any other chronic disease.
It's crazy, right? Mm-hmm. 43 million people suffer from this disease, and yet it's probably one of the most undereducated diseases around.
Yep.
Okay, so you brought up something. So let's say there's a mom listening to this podcast right now, and her kid is about to get his wisdom teeth pulled, and of course they're going to prescribe painkillers. What would be your recommendation or suggestion on how to ensure that child stays safe?
So a couple things, right? So I belong to a national coalition, Voices for Non-Opioid Choices. And through that coalition, I've learned a whole bunch about you can do a lot of surgeries with no opioids. There are plenty of oral surgeons doing wisdom teeth extraction with no opioids whatsoever. So there's plenty of protocols and non-opioid medications, but it's about understanding that option is available and asking for it, right? Then, if for some reason an opioid is required, because there is legitimate pain and pain requires medication, and sometimes ibuprofen and Tylenol don't work, right? 3 to 5 days is really the maximum amount of time someone should be taking an opioid prescription before your body becomes physically dependent and before your brain structure starts to become dependent, and you find yourselves potentially misusing.
Yeah, I think that's great information, because I don't think people realize that you don't have to have a family history of substance use disorder. While we know there are some genetic characteristics around substance use disorder, not everyone has a family history of it. Or one person in a family member, can have the disease and another person doesn't have the disease. So I think that's really good information for parents to have. And, I think as parents, we advocate for our children. We want the best for our children, and we don't want our children to be in pain. And yet we don't always think about the things that we're exposing them to, like opioids. It's the one thing I always think about, and substance use disorder runs in my family. I have a brother that suffered from opioid addiction and a father that died from alcoholism. And I think probably some meds as well. I don't know. I didn't have a relationship with him, but it's something that's always present in my life is, while I don't suffer from substance use disorder, I know that my girls could and my nieces could. And so it's always relevant, but I think a lot of parents probably don't always think about that. And I think we're seeing more and more children dabbling with drugs. It's scaring me a lot when I see children vaping. I have a 14-year-old and a 17-year-old, and my 14-year-old has had friends that have vaped. And I'm like, that's not controlled. There's no FDA backing that. You can put anything in that. And it's terrifying. And this shift lately, it's been interesting. And we've talked about overdoses and the overdose rate so significantly higher than it is this time last year. And you said, I think earlier before we started recording, that 29 overdose deaths a day in Marion County alone. What do you contribute that to?
I think it's a challenge. It's hard to pinpoint the one problem, unfortunately, so that we can find the one solution and the magic wand, which I wish for more than anything. But I think a lot of plays into it. So we have all this unrest and uncertainty existing in our lives. And the ability to cope with unrest and uncertainty varies from human being to human being. So if I already have, a not so great tool set because of my childhood experiences, right? So adverse childhood experiences, trauma is a big one, right?
Right.
So if I already have on a scale of 1 to 10 and an ACE score, I have a pretty high score. And I don't have a community support. And I don't know if I'm going to be able to pay my bills, and my job is in jeopardy. And politically, it's a challenge if you watch any news or media. And now we're socially isolated. We were in quarantine. Face-to-face support has diminished, so not everyone has access to a computer to do telehealth. So there's a lot of stuff that's contributed to our increased amount of despair, I would say. And unfortunately, people turn to substances to alleviate despair, for relief, right? I just need to relax. Specifically, withdrawal from opioids is so physically painful and it's scary. And if I don't feel like I'm going to get through withdrawal and I have the ability to stay off my opioids, staying on the opioids is easier. We, as humans, stay in pain sometimes, emotional pain, because it's easier we understand it better. Change is hard.
Right.
It's harder to get treatment right now. Getting admitted isn't as easy. And I don't know if I'm going to show up at treatment and get COVID and all the misinformation.
Yeah, I think that you hit the nail on the head, Justin. I mean, I've been at Dove House now 6 years, and I've seen a couple of things that I've never seen before. Open beds. We've never had open beds before. Justin, we can't fill those beds. And yet we know that the overdose rates are so much higher, and yet I can't get people into treatment. And the second thing is just the unrest, the amount of relapses that we're seeing with people that even have long-term sobriety, and the overdose rates that are happening. It's heartbreaking. But I see some hope, and the state of Indiana, the Department of Mental Health and Addiction, the governor's office is responding.
Yes.
Overdose Lifeline was recently awarded a significant grant to support or provide naloxone kits.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
I can. And that goes into the other piece that's challenging, which is that people don't believe they need naloxone and they use alone. So if we could get people to stop using alone, however that happens, understanding that it's possible to overdose almost any drug on the street right now, even if it's not an opioid, but instead you believe it to be a benzodiazepine like Xanax, is potentially going to have fentanyl. So we can't use alone. We got to be careful. And we do have access to naloxone. It's free. It's easy to get. You just go to our website, overdoselifeline.org, and in the very top banner, you'll see the link to request naloxone. We collect a little tiny bit of demographic data. And the reason for that, honestly, it's anonymous, right? We're not asking for personal information. We're just getting basic demographic data so we can map the need, so we can continue to sustain the free naloxone, because it's costly. It's a costly medication, but the state of Indiana, the governor's office, and the Division of Mental Health and Addiction have given us this ability, and we will mail it to you, deliver it to you. A new thing that we have that I'd love to talk about this morning with you is outside our office building, we have what's called a Nalox box. And 24/7, you can open that Nalox box and get access to naloxone, no questions asked.
That's awesome. Wow, that's a really incredible opportunity. We got enough to hand out to all of our clients at Dove House, so I have to order more, because we are actually going to be putting together kits for individuals that come in to do an assessment at Dove House. So we're going to be putting a naloxone kit in there, information about Dove House, other resources, and then a gift card. One of the things that was really interesting to me is we've had some clients that have struggled, and I had a conversation with a couple of them. We wanted them all to have the naloxone, because I said, you may not need this, and I hope you never do, because you're at the Dove House, we're working your program, but you may know someone. But for some of them, it triggered them, and it was like, well, I'm safe to use now. And I said, this is a tool. It's not your only tool, and it doesn't give you the opportunity to go out and use. And so it's a lot of that education, but I thought that was really interesting. Overdose Lifeline is hosting Overdose Awareness Day. Talk to me a little bit about that.
Yes. So internationally, this day is recognized on August 31st, and other countries, including Australia, where Overdose Awareness Day originated, will recognize and honor individual lives lost to overdose on August 31st. In Indiana, we always do it the Sunday before, and we try to align with Labor Day so we don't miss out on being able to have people attend. And the day really is about just remembering the lives that are lost. It's important for people who've lost a child, a significant loved one, a parent, a brother, a sister, to be able to really remember them, because when they're permanently gone, it's difficult. And so this is just one way we do that. So we have an event where we just offer a meal. We have a candlelight vigil. We bring in some speakers. Doug Hunsinger will be there. Our event is at the State Museum. The State Museum has been our gracious host for the last 3 years. We display the photos of loved ones. And then the last 3 years as well, we've placed ribbons, yard sign ribbons. It's the shape of the Overdose Awareness Day ribbon in our yard at 1100 West 42nd Street. And we do the number of overdose per day from the previous year data. So Right now we have 184 ribbons on the lawn. We invite people to come and put the name of their loved one on a ribbon. We always welcome them the day we put them out, but you can come anytime and we leave those up all week.
That's amazing. You're doing some really incredible things. I've been working in this field now 6 years, and I've spent my entire career in the nonprofit world. And one of the things that I've learned is, one, don't recreate the wheel. Don't mission drift. So stick with your mission because it's what you know and it's what you do well. And the third is collaboration. Collaboration is critical. And at times I've noticed and recognized that this world of substance use disorder and addiction and recovery, it's been a bit hard to collaborate. And there's not a lot of women doing this work. So I'm really honored that I get to work with you. I think we would both say that we're strong and determined women and go after what we want. And so we will work together. Talk to me a little bit about that and collaboration and how do you see collaboration in the work that you're doing?
So there's not one solution to this disease, right? It's not that simple. Treatment is complicated for this disease. So I can't just take my blood pressure medication and my blood pressure goes down in the same way with substance use disorders. Recovery supportive housing and the wraparound services provided by Dove House are a key piece, but we got to keep them alive with Naloxone to get them to Dove House, and then a strong, united voice when we need to talk about policy change is invaluable. We can't get it done by ourselves. And to believe we can get it done by ourselves is really short-sighted.
Right.
And no disrespect, but women are the smarter gender.
I agree. No offense to the men that we love and that are out in the community doing good work, but
you know, the women of the world are the ones who have historically made the big change. And I think that's why it's important for you and I to work together, because big change needs to occur. And we do need those men who are also here to walk beside us. But again, it's a collaboration. We can't do it alone, right?
Yeah. And we're in some conversations about what that looks like and how do we unite our voices to make a difference. I know that we've testified on bills together in the past, and we have some ideas of what we think needs to change and how we can steer that change in that direction. So stay tuned for more information on that, because I'm with you. It takes strong women, passionate women who care about the cause to get stuff done. And we cannot sit back while people are dying. And too many people are dying from this disease. I've experienced heartbreak in this world in the 6 years that I honestly didn't think that I would experience when I entered it. I mean, Justin, I was naive to substance use disorder when I entered this world and entered this job. Even though it impacted my family, I was not educated on it because I was like so many. It was removed from me. I didn't understand it. I wasn't educated on it. And while I can't be educated on everything that's occurring in this community, I'm passionate about this. And I'm glad that I entered the world when I did, but I want to make a change. And we need to do more.
Yeah, we can do better. I sometimes will say it is a chronic disease, but we don't have our own color on the NFL football field.
Exactly.
And we deserve that same kind of recognition in fighting this disease. We deserve the research behind a cure and a better treatment. We deserve respect for the profession, because people that go into this profession really aren't paid well and not supported in the same way a specialty doctor would be supported. The number of addiction psychiatrists in Indiana is pretty poor because it's not a well-respected field. And so those are the changes we're about to go make happen.
That's right. So stay tuned. Exciting things are going to occur. Watch out, world, or at least Indianapolis. Well, Justin, is there anything else that I didn't ask that you think people should know?
You know, don't be concerned that by having naloxone in your home implies that you are weak or it's hard to get your head around as a parent or a loved one, that there is a problem. It's a safety measure. If there is a prescription for opioids, there should be naloxone, because a lot of people are susceptible to overdose. And no one gets to recovery if they're not alive. So please reach out and request it. Visit our Nalox box outside our building at 1100 West 42nd Street and let us know how we can help support that and work with stuff has to get people alive and in recovery.
Yep. So overdoselifeline.org
Mm-hmm.
is your website.
Yes.
So make sure people check that out if they want more information about naloxone, the amazing things that you're doing. Also check out Dove Recovery House's website, doverecoveryhouse.org. You can also find us on all social media channels, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn. I know you're all there too, so look for Overdose Lifeline.
Yes.
Thank you, Justin.
Thank you, Wendy.
I appreciate this. I think you're a badass.
Thank you, too.
And I'm glad we're working together. We've got two passionate women, and a very isolating disease can keep us sick, and we need to talk about it. And I think that's exactly what we're doing.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity.
Yeah.
It was a pleasure.
All right. Thanks. Have a great day.